So you're interviewing for a CFO job and you get asked a question that just stumps you. How are you going to respond? In this video, I'll tell you the hardest interview question I faced and one that almost got me. We'll also break down what makes a tough interview question and the signs to look for. Then I'll go over my tough interview question in detail, how I answered it at the time, and a way better answer I'll give to it today. So firstly, let's break down what makes a tough interview question. And it's going to differ between individual people, of course. Some might be questions that you could not predict and practice, or it could be something that challenges whether you have sufficient experience to do the job. It could be the interviewer actually calling out your weaknesses or lack of experience and asking you to address it, which is going to put you in a very defensive position. And then there's the challenge type questions that test problem solving and quick thinking. And it could be examples like, how many gas stations are there in the country? Or how many piano tuners are there across the country? Questions you've never heard before, but also something you've got no experience with whatsoever. Others could be questions that purely test your specific knowledge on a topic that's quite relevant to the company. And it could be about, for example, a piece of legislation that governs the industry and very specific questions around that and showing what you know about it. And finally, maybe just a question that you just can't answer or that is actually being asked in a very confusing way. So you really don't know what the intent of it is and therefore what sort of answer direction you should give them. But then let's flip this around, a question that many people have heard over and over, tell me about your biggest weakness. Now this actually is not a tough interview question at all. This is a question of opportunity because you can use this to present something which is skill sets and you don't have to be trapped into actually naming weaknesses. But that is actually an area where I'll cover in a whole separate video because you can use that in a very strategic way. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's David and I've been a CFO for the past 13 years. I love to help the next gen of CFO leaders by making videos about the skills needed to succeed as a CFO and how to put yourself in the position to land the job. If that sounds like you, then subscribe so I can keep bringing you valuable content like this one. Now, thinking about tough interview questions, if you actually do a lot of interviewing yourself to hire staff, you actually have a head start here. So in my position, I've always tried to throw in some left field questions to see how a candidate reacts. And that means that you'll have actually thought about those of how you would answer it yourself in those sort of questions. But there was one that I've never thought of and it ended up being the one which I found the hardest question that I've been asked in an interview. And that was, what would you do with a $20,000 budget for your professional development? Now in some ways, this is not a trick question and it's actually not really an overwhelmingly difficult question, but it was actually that it was so unexpected. There was nothing like that which I'd practiced. I didn't have an immediate answer or something where I could really gravitate to pull in from like my experience. So my only option was to think quick, recount what executives that I've worked with in the past and what I'd heard them talk about the professional development which they'd done, which was more at the executive level. And so how did I answer it? Well, first I recognized the intent of the question. They wanted to really see what level I was operating at. So to me, the question was really, as a potential executive, how would you develop your leadership skills and do you have knowledge of suitable courses and experiences that are out there? So with that in mind, I then answered that I would enroll in a week-long course as part of Harvard's Executive Development Program. And that was something where I'd worked with someone in the past that had done one of those programs because the intent I thought was to gravitate to something which was an executive level, something which was heavily focused on leadership and something that had name recognition in delivering corporate level programs. So at the time I felt like I gave it a decent answer. Maybe I'd probably rate it a 7 out of 10. If I looked at it again today, I'd probably maybe give it a 5 out of 10 because it could have been way more specific because I really didn't turn the question around and show that I had something ready to go, that if I had the opportunity, I'd love to do this and I knew the exact program I'd want to go into. So knowing all that, how would I answer it today? Well, for a start, here's how not to answer it. Do not name a course that wouldn't cost anything like $20,000 because that then shows you have no idea about what sort of executive programs that you could buy for that level of money. And also you don't want to give something which is not a specific answer. Just being generic or naming something that's not an executive level course, it really would show that you're not at the right level yet. And something which is just a pure technical course in a narrow technical niche, to me, wouldn't be something which shows that you are exec level. But what I would do is I'll give a short list of options to show a range of ideas and broad interests. So for example, I would name things like a company director's course, I would name a leadership masterclass, and even hopefully more specific into a certain area that I had a real interest in. And then I'd maybe also name a targeted short course in a very specialized topic. And it could be something like risk management or organizational change, something which is relevant to all organizations and that would show that it's got relevance to an exec level as well. And the last option I would probably give is that I would then seek an executive mentor and do a mentor program for say 6 months. And that's something where again it would be probably a different answer than what other people would be given, but it would be showing that I've got the level of thinking around trying to get into that position and expand my network, as well as expand my range of experiences by working with someone who's been there and done it before. Then it would be really important to finish off the answer by making a direct statement of how that professional development would help me perform better in the role and bring more value to the company. And then I've closed the loop. I've identified something of value to me personally, but that can come back to the company, but also show that my thinking is really at that executive level, and that's what they're trying to get to with the question. And as a bonus, I'll tell you the second hardest question that I've ever had. And again, this is an even simpler one. The question was, can you really do this job? And it threw me because it was such a bizarre question to make, because it was actually part of an informal chat prior to a formal offer being made for that role. I'd already passed through all the interviewing phases, and it was just a comment where they really needed just to have that confirmation in their own head. Whereas for me, I needed to decide, should I answer it or not? Is it just a statement or is it actually a question looking for an answer? Because essentially I had the job offer already locked in and I didn't want to risk anything at that stage. The CEO, by asking it, was just really looking for that extra assurance, thinking out loud that he'd made the right choice. But how would you answer a question like that? Let me know your thoughts on the toughest interview question that you've ever been asked down below. I'd love to hear it and hear some more experiences from people out there. For the business and finance professionals, I've got tons more content coming designed just for you, starting with this one right up here. And hit the subscribe button to join me as I share my CFO experience with you. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.